The United States' industrial mobilization during World War II represented an unprecedented demonstration of national capacity and organizational coordination. American factories became the backbone not only of the nation's war effort, but also of the reconstruction of European economies, producing machinery, vehicles, and equipment essential for both military operations and post-war recovery. The ability to sustain such production while maintaining civilian needs reflected the remarkable adaptability of a democratic society confronted with an existential threat. Unlike totalitarian regimes, which relied on coercion, American industry demonstrated that voluntary, organized effort could achieve extraordinary outcomes, both in terms of quantity and technological sophistication. This mobilization laid the foundation for post-war prosperity, showing that industrial strength could simultaneously support military power and consumer abundance. By the end of the war, the scale of production was staggering. American factories produced nearly 300,000 aircraft and 86,000 tanks, equipping both domestic forces and Allied armies through Lend-Lease agreements. The Sherman tank, while technically inferior to German Tigers and Panthers, proved effective due to its reliability and the overwhelming numerical advantage it provided. For each German heavy tank, there were multiple Shermans available to replace losses. Artillery production reached 193,000 units, ranging from portable pack howitzers to massive railway guns capable of striking targets deep behind enemy lines. The combination of abundant artillery pieces, unlimited ammunition, and innovative forward observation methods allowed American forces to deliver concentrated firepower with unprecedented speed, reflecting a doctrine of mass rather than individual superiority. Shell production alone numbered in the billions, supplying a sustained and overwhelming force that was vital for operational success. The logistical achievements of American mobilization were equally extraordinary. 2 million Army trucks provided mobility that fundamentally changed the nature of warfare, enabling supply lines to extend hundreds of miles beyond traditional railheads. The Red Ball Express exemplified this capability. At its peak, 33,000 soldiers operated 6,000 trucks along dedicated routes, delivering 12,000 tons of supplies daily to forward units. This logistical flexibility was possible only because of the massive production capacities of American factories. Small arms production similarly scaled to unprecedented levels. Millions of M1 Garand rifles, M1 carbines, Thompson submachine guns, and Browning automatic rifles were manufactured, equipping not only American soldiers, but also Allied forces whose domestic production was insufficient. The M1 Garand, the only semi-automatic standard infantry rifle during the war, provided a decisive advantage in firepower, yet its effectiveness depended entirely on sufficient industrial output. Industrial mobilization extended beyond weapons and vehicles. The United States expanded its merchant marine to sustain military logistics and international trade. Shipyards produced 2,710 Liberty ships, alongside 512 faster Victory ships, tankers to transport oil, refrigerated vessels to carry food, troop transports, and hospital ships. Each vessel type required specialized designs and equipment, yet production scaled to meet the rapidly growing demands of a global war effort. Aircraft production encompassed an extraordinary variety of roles. Heavy bombers like the B-17 and B-24 conducted strategic bombing. Medium bombers, including the B-25 and A-20, supported tactical operations. Fighters, such as the P-38, P-47, and P-51, established air superiority and provided ground support, while transport and training aircraft
ensured the movement and preparation of personnel.
Each category required distinct tooling, assembly processes, and supply chains. Yet factories managed simultaneous production, continuously integrating design improvements from combat experience. The raw materials and workforce needed for this level of production presented additional challenges. Steel production expanded to meet both military and essential civilian needs. Aluminum production grew to supply the aircraft industry. And copper, critically short, led the government to borrow silver to fabricate electromagnets for the uranium enrichment program at Oak Ridge. When Japan cut off natural rubber supplies from Southeast Asia, synthetic rubber development became a national priority, achieving production levels by 1944 that surpassed pre-war imports. The workforce drew on unprecedented sources: women, minorities, teenagers, retirees, and disabled workers all contributed, often receiving rapid training to fill highly technical or labor-intensive roles. Educational programs taught high school students, homemakers, and farmers the skills necessary for defense production, demonstrating both the flexibility of the labor force and the urgency of wartime necessity. The work was physically demanding and hazardous. Industrial accidents were common, yet workers persisted, motivated by the direct connection between production and the survival of soldiers overseas. The financial dimension of American wartime mobilization was immense. Between 1941 and 1945, the federal government expended roughly $300 billion on the war effort, surpassing all previous cumulative spending in U.S. history. Defense budgets peaked at over $80 billion annually in 1944 and 1945, accounting for approximately 40% of the entire national economy. Funding came through a combination of taxation, war bonds, and government borrowing. Income taxes, previously targeting primarily the wealthy, were extended to the majority of working Americans, and payroll deduction systems streamlined collection. War bond campaigns encouraged citizens to loan money to the government, creating a sense of participation and shared sacrifice. Despite such massive fiscal outlays, inflation was managed through price controls and rationing. The Office of Price Administration established maximum prices for most goods, and rationing ensured equitable distribution of scarce commodities. These policies allowed full employment and extensive government spending without destabilizing the economy, while simultaneously fostering extraordinary wartime savings among the population. Americans accumulated purchasing power that would later fuel post-war prosperity. The industrial mobilization created significant opportunities for entrepreneurs and established businesses alike. Figures such as Henry Kaiser, who achieved wealth through Liberty Ship construction, and Howard Hughes, whose aircraft business expanded dramatically during the war, exemplify how wartime demand facilitated economic growth and innovation. Numerous smaller manufacturers benefited as well, transforming modest machine shops into large-scale factories supplying components to prime contractors. These developments not only generated immediate wealth, but also laid the foundation for the sustained economic expansion of the post-war period. The conclusion of hostilities required complex reconversion to peacetime production. Women who had entered the workforce during the war were encouraged, or pressured, to relinquish their positions to returning veterans. This transition often created tension, as many women had developed both the skills and the personal satisfaction associated with industrial employment. Similarly, African American workers, who had gained employment and higher wages in defense industries, faced renewed discrimination in the post-war economy. Despite these challenges, the transition to civilian production proceeded more smoothly than anticipated. Automobile manufacturing resumed quickly, and by 1946, new vehicles were once again available, though supply could not meet demand for several years. Housing construction boomed, driven by veterans marrying and forming families, aided by the GI Bill's provisions for higher education and low-interest home loans. The resulting expansion of the middle class transformed American society, facilitating suburban growth, car-oriented lifestyles, and new patterns of consumption. Wartime savings, accumulated under conditions of scarcity, provided the capital for post-war investment, creating a cycle of economic growth that underpinned the prosperity of the 1950s and 1960s. The international implications of American industrial dominance were profound. The United States emerged from World War II as the preeminent economic power, with the dollar established as the global reserve currency. American companies expanded into foreign markets, and U.S. products became integral to global trade. The Marshall Plan, announced in 1947, committed billions of dollars to the reconstruction of Western Europe, simultaneously fostering economic recovery and strengthening alliances against the Soviet Union. This global engagement was feasible only because American industrial capacity could support both domestic needs and international commitments. Similarly, the post-war Cold War rivalry with the Soviet Union rested on U.S. productive capacity. The massive peacetime military establishment required sustained industrial output, reinforcing a strategic advantage that the Soviet economy could not match across multiple sectors simultaneously. Technological innovation during World War II was both extraordinary and enduring. The demands of large-scale military production spurred advances that had profound peacetime applications. The proximity fuse, designed to increase the effectiveness of anti-aircraft fire, represented a breakthrough in miniaturized electronics. Unlike traditional shells that required direct hits or precise detonation timing, the proximity fuse contained a miniature radio transmitter and receiver. When a shell passed near an aircraft, the reflected signal triggered detonation, dramatically improving battlefield effectiveness. Initially deployed over water to prevent the enemy from recovering failed shells, the fuse was later used extensively in combat, proving decisive in battles such as the Battle of the Bulge. Beyond its military application, the technology contributed to industrial automation and eventually to broader electronics development, exemplifying how wartime innovations could transition to civilian use. Radar technology, originally developed by the British, was refined and mass-produced by American industry. Early systems were cumbersome, unreliable, and difficult to manufacture, but U.S. engineers redesigned them for large-scale production while simultaneously enhancing performance. Radar became essential for naval, air, and ground operations, enabling night and adverse weather missions, detecting enemy aircraft and ships, and guiding interceptors to targets. After the war, radar technology revolutionized civilian aviation, air traffic control, and marine navigation, improving safety and efficiency in transportation. Similarly, advancements in metallurgy driven by military needs left a lasting impact on civilian industry. Aircraft production demanded lightweight aluminum alloys and high-temperature steels for engines, while armor plating required specialized steel compositions. These research and development efforts accelerated material science, benefiting industries ranging from construction to transportation. The chemical and pharmaceutical industries also underwent dramatic expansion. Explosives production necessitated vast quantities of nitrates and other chemicals, while the loss of natural rubber supplies led to a successful synthetic rubber program, which later became a permanent industrial sector. DDT and other insecticides, initially developed to protect soldiers, found widespread agricultural use, and mass production of penicillin during the war laid the foundation for the modern pharmaceutical industry. In every sector, wartime mass production techniques transformed American manufacturing, extending the efficiency gains of the assembly line to far more complex products than automobiles. Just-in-time inventory, quality control protocols, and production scheduling, refined during wartime, became standard practices in peacetime industry. Education and workforce development experienced parallel innovation. The urgency of wartime production created rapid training programs for workers with little or no factory experience. High school students, housewives, and farmers acquired skills such as machine operation, welding, and aircraft assembly. Technical schools and in-plant training programs supplemented traditional apprenticeships with structured curricula, visual aids, and hands-on experience. These methods proved effective and persisted after the war, influencing vocational education and community college programs. Furthermore, the GI Bill, which enabled millions of veterans to pursue higher education, catalyzed the expansion of American universities and vocational institutions, permanently increasing educational capacity. Management practices evolved in response to wartime demands. Large-scale industrial coordination necessitated innovations in program management, systems engineering, and critical path analysis. Corporations that had previously operated with limited planning now adopted sophisticated strategies to manage complex production schedules. Wartime experience informed post-war business culture, as a generation of managers applied these techniques in peacetime enterprises. Harvard Business School and other institutions studied these practices, integrating lessons into formal curricula that shaped American corporate management for decades. The social effects of the mobilization were equally significant. Women's participation in defense industries challenged traditional gender norms. While many returned to domestic roles after the wartime experience demonstrated their capabilities in demanding industrial environments. Iconic representations, such as Rosie the Riveter, reflected genuine accomplishments that influenced later women's movements. Similarly, African American workers, who migrated northward for industrial employment, gained economic opportunities previously unavailable in the segregated South. This experience intensified demands for civil rights, as Black veterans returning from overseas service were less willing to accept systemic discrimination. Wartime industrial mobilization, therefore, contributed directly to the social movements that reshaped mid-20th century America. The post-war economic and geopolitical landscape was profoundly shaped by the industrial mobilization of World War II. American manufacturing capacity did not simply vanish with the cessation of hostilities. It provided a foundation for sustained economic growth and global influence. The infrastructure built for wartime production, including power plants, factories, transportation networks, and ports, remained valuable assets, allowing a rapid transition to peacetime manufacturing. Skilled workers trained during the war continued contributing to economic productivity, while management techniques honed under the pressures of large-scale coordination were applied to civilian industries, enhancing efficiency and output. Consumer demand played a central role in post-war economic expansion. Wartime scarcity had led to unprecedented personal savings, as workers earned wages but faced limited opportunities to purchase goods. This accumulated capital became a critical driver of post-war prosperity, fueling demand for automobiles, appliances, and housing. The GI Bill further expanded consumer purchasing power by enabling millions of veterans to attend college and obtain low-cost home loans, fostering a new suburban middle class. Suburbanization, characterized by single-family homes, shopping centers, and car-centric lifestyles, was a direct outgrowth of wartime industrial and financial planning. Internationally, American industrial dominance dictated the post-war economic order. The United States emerged from the war as the world's preeminent economic power, with the dollar serving as the global reserve currency under the Bretton Woods system. Institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, headquartered in Washington, managed international finance and development, reinforcing U.S. influence. The Marshall Plan, launched in 1947, committed billions of dollars to rebuild Western European economies, simultaneously creating prosperous trading partners and fortifying alliances against Soviet expansion. Japan's post-war recovery, guided by American advisors, transformed the country into an economic power, demonstrating the broader global reach of U.S. industrial expertise. The Cold War further tested and leveraged American industrial capacity. Maintaining a large military establishment required sustained production of aircraft, ships, and other military hardware. While output levels did not match wartime peaks, the United States possessed the industrial depth to respond to crises such as the Korean War and the space race. Programs such as Apollo, culminating in the 1969 moon landing, relied on systems engineering and management techniques developed during World War II, illustrating the enduring impact of wartime industrial experience on national technological achievements. American industrial superiority provided strategic advantages over the Soviet Union, which lacked the capacity to produce simultaneously across consumer, military, and technological sectors. This disparity contributed to the eventual collapse of the Soviet system, as economic deprivation in the East contrasted sharply with the prosperity of the West. In conclusion, the industrial mobilization of World War II established the foundation for decades of American economic, technological, and geopolitical leadership. It demonstrated the capacity of a democratic society to organize and mobilize resources on a scale rivaling totalitarian regimes. Innovations in technology, materials, management, and education reshaped industry and society, while the integration of women and minorities into the workforce challenged traditional social norms. The legacy of wartime production extended far beyond immediate military success, driving post-war economic expansion, shaping international institutions, and providing a decisive strategic advantage during the Cold War. Though the physical factories and assembly lines have largely disappeared, the achievements of the mobilization endure in the United States' economic structure, technological capabilities, and global influence, underscoring the transformative power of coordinated national effort in times of crisis.